Hello, race fans and hot rodders. This is the Big Comedy Podcast, and I am talking to a big comedian and a good friend of mine, Mr. Steve Bjork. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm just not sure if that moniker of big comedian is talking about physicality or stature or
Oh,
what.
it's all the above. It's all the above. You're a great, funny man, and I'm very excited to have you on. And one of the things that's most exciting to me today, you may be one of the first comedians in the New England going back out there and doing comedy tonight.
Well, yeah, I have no fear of disease. That's pretty much why.
It's pretty interesting. What's the layout?
In
What's
fact,
the plan?
I have a lot of bills, so I'm kind of hoping for disease.
Yeah.
Um, so it's an interesting concept, and this is not their first show. This is their second show.
Okay.
Um, and they're setting it up like a drive-in movie theater,
Okay.
basically. The cars pull into the parking lot. Um, They separate each car by at least one parking spot, and then the people take out their folding chairs and they set up in the empty parking spot so that each car acts as like a 6 foot barrier.
Okay.
And they built a stage, an outside stage, and then the sound is going to be instead of huge speakers, the sound's being carried over a very local radio station. So it's really like just going to the drive-in movie theater where you're listening to the show through your car radio.
Wow, that's fun. I wanted to be sneaking in the trunk like we used to do.
Yeah, as soon as I got this gig, I was thinking about that old Cheech and Chong skit. Do you remember them where they go to the drive-in, they get all the guys in the trunk?
Well, Rocky Laporte used to have a really comedian. Rocky Laporte used to have a great, funny bit about how he was from a tough neighborhood and they used to just fire a few rounds through the trunk. That's a tough.
That's great. That's great.
So anyway, yeah. So it's you. Is it Carolyn Plummer?
Yeah, me and Carolyn Plummer.
That's a
And I
great.
think, yeah, it's just the two of us, I guess.
Is Mike Smith running the ramrod in the show out there?
He's booking it. I don't know if he'll also host, but I know he's the guy I got the gig from.
That's great. And this is your
And
first.
you've been to Tupelo, right?
What's that?
You've been to Tupelo, haven't you?
I went to the old one. I don't know if I've been to the new one. They have
Oh,
a new,
well,
bigger, better. Although the other one was great.
the other one was fantastic. This one is even better. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of the nicest showrooms in all of New England.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and they have a lot of great. I
I
mean,
won't be seeing it tonight, but
and the
it's one of the
concept
nicest.
there when there isn't a pandemic is I think you can bring your own alcohol, right?
That was the case in the old location. They now have a liquor license in this
Oh,
location.
it used to be people were bringing in like coolers of their own beverages, and then they would buy
Yeah,
sandwiches or whatever and buy tickets to the show.
right, right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a strictly New Hampshire operation.
exactly. Yeah,
They're not letting you run your business like that, south of the border. And
yeah. It's tough to shut somebody off when they're drinking their own booze.
yeah, it really is. I was served by me, you know. Wow. So how much time you got to do tonight?
I have no idea. I just show up and they'll tell me how much time to do, which is as long as it's more than a couple minutes, I'll be thrilled.
Do you
Although
any more?
this is the longest time, and I'm sure this is true for you too, but this is the longest time I've not been on stage since I was 21.
Right.
This,
Right.
so I know there's going to be some rust I'm going to have to shake off,
Sure.
but I can't wait. I've been going nuts without the stage as an outlet.
Sure. Sure. Not to mention the income is nice.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, are you gonna have to work clean outside because you're outside? Or you're on a radio wave, or
Yes, that's one of the stipulations, and that's probably why I'm one of the first ones back because that's my niche anyway, as you know. I work very, very clean.
yeah.
So I'm one of the few people that when they say work clean, I don't have to start editing in my mind when I'm on stage.
Right. Right. Well, you and me started out around the same time, and it was always kind of said that if you had a clean set, you could work anywhere. So you could do
Right.
corporate gigs, you could do cruise ships, you could do fundraisers, whatever you have to do.
Yeah.
So just there's a wider palette of possibilities, you know.
And that's true, and that's one of the benefits. But the reason I always right from the word go, I always work clean, and I'll tell you why. Because when I was a kid, I'd listen to all the Bill Cosby albums,
Right.
and I just memorize them. And then I think it was 1980, roughly. So I was what, as 12. Eddie Murphy came out with his first album, and nobody knew anything about him. So my mother just thought, there's Buckwheat from Saturday Night Live. She bought the album. We all sat down as a family to listen to the album, and it was one of the most horrifying experiences I've ever had in my life. And it was at that, and I knew when I was 7 I wanted to be a comedian. So at that moment, I made the decision that I was going to work clean so that anybody, families could sit down and listen to me.
Right. You would have had a different reaction if it was just you and your buddies somewhere listening.
Oh yeah,
You were
don't
loving.
get me wrong. That album was hysterical,
Right.
and his second album, Delirious, was hysterical,
Right.
but not with my mom.
Not with. Right. 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 It's like you're watching an R-rated movie and a sex scene comes on. And you're sitting next to your mom. You're like, oh
Yeah, I'm gonna go
no.
get some chips.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm always fascinated by. Well, first of all, when you start in Boston, like when, like 19.
1990. It was. I want to say it was either December of '89 or January of '90. So I just go with '90 because it makes it easy to round number. And
Right. Me too.
is that right?
That's when I moved up to Boston and started taking my beating.
It was. It's funny. My timing in life is everything, and I've never had good timing
Me either.
because that was right when things were starting to go downhill. That was just when crowds weren't coming, they weren't filling the rooms anymore. And
Right.
I kind of take responsibility for that.
Yeah. Me too.
It's probably my fault.
Well, it's funny because the Ding Ho people treated us like it was our fault.
Yeah, I
The
think they're still a little bitter.
And all of a sudden, people were being. They went from there's 50 clubs around Boston, New England they could drive to now there's 25. So there's
Exactly.
sharp elbows being thrown, and they weren't looking for new people coming up.
No, they certainly weren't. And one of the problems was there were so many comics. I mean, let me
And great comics.
restate that. Let me restate that though. There were so many great comics that all of these rooms started popping up, and then eventually there was more rooms than there was good comics. So there were a ton of mediocre comics that were getting work,
Right.
and then watering down the audience's expectation.
Right.
That was the major problem. And I'm not disparaging any. Look, I certainly was a mediocre comic for a long time.
Sure.
Um, they were trying to improve, but it watered down the audience's expectations, and the audience stopped coming like they were previously.
Right.
I mean, when you think about back in those days when it was Lenny Clark, Steve Sweeney, Tony V, Mike Donovan, Mike McDonald, all on one show. That was the show.
I know.
How do you compete with that?
Right. Right. Wow. Monsters.
Yeah. And I mean,
I'm
these
just.
are
I can't
depending on your
the
your
fact
listeners.
drive in
I'm
tonight.
sorry, go ahead.
You're going to be on a drive through will be the next thing, but tonight's a drive in. And if they all start beeping their horns, is that applause or is that heckling at that point?
That's a great question. Yeah.
I don't even know the answer for that.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I'll find out tonight and I'll
Like
report
just
back.
if you like the joke, just turn on your windshield wipers and like how do you get a reaction? How you gonna know? You get to set your timing like there's a laugh there. Like how do you know if they're laughing?
Well, hopefully the parking lot will be full enough that I'll hear it. I'm
So they,
hoping, you know. But yeah, that's a good question. Like, so if you're laughing, you turn on the windshield wipers. If you're laughing so hard you cry, then you turn on the mist on your windshield wipers.
nice.
Uh, yeah, and then if you hate me, then you honk.
No, just start your car and leave. Drive away. Man, so you look, we're old veterans now at this point.
We are, and it's funny because I still kind of think of myself as the new guy,
Yeah, me
but
too.
nobody else does.
Well, I'm in shock, like with some of the newer guys, they kind of treat us like the dinosaurs that are holding up, getting in the way of them getting work. And it's like we're still waiting for the Ding Ho guys. They're still like, when we first started in 1990, they'd say, "I've been doing comedy for 10 years."
Right.
So that's
Right.
why I'm a headliner. And then when you and I were doing it for 10 years, they're like, "We've been doing comedy for 20 years, but they're still here."
Yeah, right.
And,
This isn't a civil service
and,
position. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it.
and you know what I mean? Like they were getting better every year too. The bar
Right.
kept rising with them. Like
Yeah.
they didn't, they weren't. The thing with I interviewed Robert Klein, and he's like, I think he's been doing comedy like 50 years. He's like, I've never been better. I have more
Yeah.
material. I'm still writing. I'm still fine tuning it. Can you imagine?
And it's so true. And that's one that's I just think about even 5 years ago. I think I'm a hell of a lot better now than I was just 5 years ago. And that 5 years ago, that was what, 20 years into my career?
Right,
Yeah.
right,
But this is, and I do hear, it's funny you say that because I do hear comics saying that I've been doing this for 6 years. I should be headlining. It's not a civil service position.
right,
Your longevity has nothing to do with it.
right.
It's can people follow you? Yes, then maybe you shouldn't be headlining.
Yeah, right. Be outstanding.
Yeah,
Be
you
undeniable.
got you got to force the great
Billy Burr,
example of that was
undeniable.
Artie Jim. I'm sorry, say again.
Billy Burr says, "Be undeniable." That
Absolutely.
that's what it is. It has nothing to do with anything else.
I remember back in, what is it, 93 maybe? I was doing a show in Rhode Island for Pretty Polly. It was a college gig.
I remember
And the
Denise.
opener, say again?
Denise, I think her name was.
Yeah, Denise Kirk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and the opener for me was this kid, Dane Cook.
Ah. So
And I have to tell you, at
never heard.
that point, at that point, I hadn't seen him for a little while. And he went up on stage and he tore it up. And I've always like, by the way, just let me say this for the record. Dane is a great guy.
Yeah.
No matter, I know he takes some crap for the material that he does. He's a great guy. I
Right.
like him.
Right.
Um,
Agreed.
and his material hit that crowd, and he tore it up, and I couldn't follow him.
Well,
I
especially
really struggled.
because that was his wheelhouse. That was like
Oh yeah,
that's what he built his empire on.
absolutely.
He built.
But that was a great example. This was a kid who was doing it what at that point maybe a year,
Right.
and there was I don't and this isn't an ego thing because I wasn't like a superstar or anything, but I couldn't follow him. I can't think of somebody who really could follow him in that setting,
Yeah.
and that's being undeniable. He was just
Right.
that fantastic, and that's why he rose the way he did.
Well, actually, when he started hitting, he did get some pushback from the elders.
Hmm.
They weren't happy about this because they couldn't really figure out also what he was doing. He was acting everything out. Like
Right,
he wasn't following the Boston script of original content, set up, punch, lots
right,
of punches, punch, 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 punch. And
right.
here's this guy who's acting everything out.
And there's very few punchlines. At least at that
Right.
point in his act,
Correct.
there were very few punchlines. It was all about personality and presentation,
Right.
and it was fantastic. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I always say he opened the door for us a little because I don't know if you remember this, but I had a conversation with Rita from Nick's
Hmm.
before Bill and Patrice and Dane came on, and Bob Kelly and all
Yeah.
those guys came on the scene. They had a couple of years, or at least a year, where Rita said, "Hey, we've decided that all the clubs were being booked by women at that time. It was Nick's, Catch a Rising
Hmm.
Star, um,
Kowloon.
Stitches, and I'm missing one, but
Yeah,
they
that's right.
used to
Nina and
all watch
Stitches.
Melrose Place together.
Yeah.
Yep. And they, she said, Jim, we all talked about it, and we just really want to help women out. We have enough. They literally had that conversation. I'm like, you're doing what you say guys do. You met in a back room, and Dane kind of broke the floodgates again because I remember Rita saying, "Well, he's really cute," which I wasn't. So suddenly, it freed up more stage time again, and then during that period of time, suddenly, we'd see Bill Burr and Patrice and a lot. I mean, a lot of great guys, a lot of great guys.
Oh yeah. And it's funny that they came up in the same generation, those
Yeah,
guys.
he did. Yeah.
And they were, and this is a great example. Those guys were undeniable.
Oh yeah. Well, I just talked to my podcast last week was Al Del Benny. He's another one.
Yeah.
He's in Australia now,
Oh,
and
no kidding.
yeah, yeah, he
I
married.
haven't seen Al in a long time. But you just reminded me the first time I worked with Patrice. I'd never seen him, never heard of him, didn't know anything about him. And it was this gig down in Weymouth, and um, I had some friends down in Weymouth. So me and my girlfriend at the time, we were going to go down to Weymouth like really early, hang out with my friends, and then go to the show. So I get this call from this guy who says his name is Patrice. And he says, "Yeah, listen, I got to come in, hit connection, give me your number, and I was just hoping I could hook up a ride down to Weymouth." And I was like, "Oh, geez, I'd love to help you out, but I got these friends down there. We're going down there early." And all he's just like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, I get it. All right, no problem."
Headed.
So then, so then we're doing the show, and he's opening, and he starts doing this bit right off the bat about how when you're black and you ask somebody for a ride, and you can tell they just don't want to give you a ride. It was so awesome. I, I was like, I know he's talking about me, but that's not the way it was.
I tell this too much, but me and Greg Carey had a place when I moved down in New York, and it was a fifth floor walk up, and Patrice used to stay there when he went down to New York from Boston. This is like in '95 or '96 or whatever it was, and it was hilarious. Most times I'd be on if I was on the road, Patrice would be down crashing in my house, like in my bed, you know, or my futon, I should say. Which I don't know how he did that, but it was funny. You'd hear him come up the stairs, and he'd be like so out of breath, like a five-floor walk up was not
No,
suited for him.
no, that's for sure.
And he got a great bit out of that. He's like, when you got a fifth floor walk up, you get everything you need. Because
I
you're not
remember
going
that bit
back down
actually.
the store. You get.
He was, oh man, he was such a great guy.
Yeah, yeah. So I,
It's kind of sad that we're at the point in our life where we're talking about. Oh yeah, he was a great guy. He's gone now. I remember, and one of my favorites, Bob Seibel.
sure.
He got to the point later in his career where half of his act was like a necrology. He's talking about this guy who's not with us anymore. This guy who's not with us anymore. But one of my favorite bits about Bob ever did, and I feel it now. I so feel it. Is he used to say, when you're 15, when you're 16, and you hear about a guy who's 32 and he dies, you're like, hey, he had a full life. That's great. Now I hear about somebody who's 75. It's like, what happened? He was just a kid.
I know.
That's the point I'm at in my life.
I
I
know.
was at a funeral for this 82-year-old guy. We were at a funeral, and the guy standing in front of me says, 82, that's not a bad age to go. And I said, yeah, unless you're 81. There is no good time.
No, unless you're on fire.
Unless you got to, unless you're what?
Unless you're on fire or something.
Yeah, yeah, or working at the Charlie Horse,
Time to go.
or or have a lot of bills. And
Doing comedy drive-ins.
exactly
Give me a sign.
for
Time to
for
go.
cut rate money.
Hey, I just want to bring this up because you have kind of an amazing story. Well, I'll let you tell. You adopted some kids,
Mhm.
and it's an amazing story. So, if you don't mind sharing that with me.
Yeah, sure. So let me see. Let me figure out how to start this out. But we, my wife and I, I'm not married anymore, but at the time, my wife and I, we heard about this story. There was these four kids, and they had it really tough. They were actually living in an abandoned van in the woods of Lowell, Massachusetts, and with their mother, who was making a lot of bad decisions, as you may imagine. Now, if you're anything like me and you hear a story like this, immediately you're thinking, Lowell has woods.
Right.
They do. Apparently, they do. I thought just picture a van next to a tree. That must be the
Fine.
Lowell woods. Right. Anyway, so DCF got tipped off. They found out. They took them out of the van, And it's kind of a long, convoluted story how we even heard about it, never mind how we got involved. But to get to cut to the chase, we became the very proud foster and then adopted parents of these four little kids. And and they're fantastic kids. They all have some struggles that they're going through as a result of this initial thing, but they're good kids, you know. Um, but you know, it's I also have um, from my former marriage, I have a stepson who um, I met him when he was 3, and I was dating his mom, and then I married his mom, so it became like a lease to own thing, and so I spent half of my life raising an only child. And then all of a sudden, these four feral children come running in the house, and it was, and I know that sounds cavalier, but they were wild animals. It was like,
Right.
it was like, oh, what a cute little girl. Oh, she's a biter. Write that down. So anyway, like if you have an only child and you say, he's messing up, and you go, you don't do that again. For the most part, an only child doesn't even know any better. He's like, oh, okay, I guess I don't do that again. You have one of four messing up, and you go, you don't do that again. Within seconds, the other three are right in his ear going, you're not going to take that crap, are you?
They have a
And
union.
they don't. Yeah, union, I like that. Um, but it has been an adventure. The and we're doing the homeschooling now, which is a nightmare. Um, but I got to tell you, it's probably better than getting four kids up and ready for school.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare actually that I do in my act. I can't really do it here a Zoom call, but um, they're great kids, and we're having a ball.
It's funny. I just did put a joke up on Facebook today. They say people say that middle age is at 53. I said, but it's 28 if you're homeschooling. You're done.
Yeah, that's very true. This
You know,
remote
I'm
learning.
amazed by that because I know you've always worked hard. You've always worked a lot. Everybody loves you, but you're not Brangelina. You know, that's like a Brangelina story. Her and Brad, find four kids in a, like their their people find them actually, and then their
Well,
people handle it. Like, like you have
that's
people.
exactly right.
It's like you
That's right.
and this nice lady that you were married to. You know,
Well, and that's we give each other as comedians give each other a hard time all the time, and it's how we cope with everything. And I've been accused many times of getting these children for no other reason but that I had no new material.
material.
And they have, and they they are a tax write-off because they have provided some good material.
Well, I tell you, man, that's an amazing story, and you know, that's some
You know, but I would love to know this whole idea of propagating and continuing the species. I'm not sure whose idea this was because really it's a thankless job. My oldest daughter now, like when we got our kids, my oldest daughter was at the time 6. She's 13 now, and for the most part hates me. Um, and uh, so and we talked about you talk about doing home haircuts. I'm the only adult in the house. My oldest daughter's 13. I'm not putting scissors in her hand. There's no way.
you get more material if you have one ear.
That's true.
Of course,
The Van
born with
Gogh.
a monocle, but oh my gosh, that is amazing, dude. You're a good guy. I mean,
I'll tell you the other thing about having a big family. There's an old adage that nobody on their deathbed ever wishes they spent more time at the office.
right,
I think in 20 years, for the survivors of the coronavirus, that's not going to be true.
right, right. Well, I marvel at that. Like my parents had 5 kids, my wife's parents had 5 kids, and we're always like, how did they do it? I
There
mean,
was a there
how
was
did
there was
they knew?
but there was a difference back then though too. There wasn't the expectation of helicopter parenting back
Right,
then. You when you got up, your mom probably gave you breakfast and then said, "Go outside."
the nice day out, get out of the house.
and then she wouldn't see you again till the streetlights came on.
Yeah, I was
It's
thinking
not like,
too, like we had a neighborhood of families, so we just like you hooked up with all the other kids and just kind of ran wild, you know.
yeah,
And I guess there was protection in the herd
right,
because there was
exactly.
always 5 to 30 of you.
Yeah, and that's why people had 5 or 6 kids because you didn't know how many were going to make it.
Right, right. Wow. Hey, give up your social media so people can find you because you are funny and you're a great writer and you're a great guy and I'll put that up and also good luck on your drive-in gig tonight, man. This gives me hope. You're one of the first guys out there, getting back out there. So you're like an astronaut. We're like on the moon and we're like, is this oxygen going to work? I don't know. Let's just
I'm
be
going to give
quiet.
away my age here, but let's hope this doesn't turn into an Andromeda strain
Yes.
deal where I come back from space with an organism.
Right. We're going to quarantine you for 14 days and see how it went.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, man, I am so looking forward to it. Just getting back on the stage. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be odd, but yeah, hopefully it goes well.
All right. So tell us where they can find you. I know it's
So,
good.
yeah, so my website is stevebjork.com. On Facebook, just to make it real simple, I'm stephenbjork.com with a PH.
Okay.
I mean, not dot .com. I'm Stephen Bjork with a PH. I have a comedian website, Facebook page that I've really done almost nothing with. So my personal page is probably the best place to go. That's where I post everything. I'm on Instagram at Steve Bjork Comic, and I do almost nothing there. And Twitter, I've given up on completely because I like to use too many letters.
Okay.
Plus, I don't want them fact checking me.
Right. Right. That's the new thing. Right. So, everybody find Steve Bjork. He's funny. He's at the point of the spear now, taking back the comedy hill for all of us. And I hope it goes really great tonight. I thank you for your time tonight, buddy.
Yeah, yeah. I hope it goes well, and thank you for having me, Jim. It's always great talking to you.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah.